Hello, it's Lord Slar here, back with a video on how I would improve Doctor Who for Series 12. Series 11 has had by far the most mixed reaction of any Doctor Who series since I've been watching. Some people have had a strange and undying obsessive hatred of it, while others love it to an extent that I don't really see as possible given how bland the series was. But aside from those extremes, I think the real reason the reaction was mixed was because most people, including myself, fall within the bracket of thinking it was not great but not that horrible either. I think that the reason why many people are so lukewarm on the whole thing is that Series 11 really lacked direction and focus on many aspects which I'll discuss. Obviously I'm no professional writer, but what I think I bring up in this video is relevant, and is certainly something that a lot of people have picked up on during the course of Series 11. Either way, I hope this will be very constructive, unlike a lot of the Series 11 hate channels which exist. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this. The first problem I have is the real lack of narrative direction in the series. I covered this in great detail back in my video on the big problem with Series 11. To summarise what I said there, Classic Who had little narrative thread running throughout the series because it focused on individual stories. Prior New Who wouldn't focus on individual stories, but would rather try to weave less focused short stories together through an ongoing narrative story arc, whereas Series 11 does neither of these. As a result, it ends up being a bunch of half-baked episodes which feel they had little point to them and no lasting impact bar a handful of exceptions. There are two ways of fixing this. My preferred way is to create longer stories, focus all the effort on just a few short stories a year, and it'll be easier to make quality Doctor Who which is fully developed each time, as setting up a new world and set of characters each episode is something that takes time to pull off in a satisfying way. The alternate method is to employ an ongoing narrative, like RTD and Moffat did. This doesn't just include a story arc, but also characters, some of whom may pop in and out of the narrative. Whether or not you prefer the Classic Who way of doing things, or the RTD/Moffat way of doing things, they at least justified their respective formats with their own way of creating a substantive direction for the story. When you have short episodes and no ongoing thread, it is near impossible to achieve a compelling narrative. The next issue I'm going to discuss is Jodie Whittaker's Doctor and the lack of depth the character has in this incarnation. No matter your taste in Doctor, they all have very distinctive and recognisable character traits. They say and do things other incarnations wouldn't do. Even though I'm not a fan of, say, the 10th Doctor for instance, I don't deny that the incarnation does have depth and clearly a lot of effort went into crafting his character. I can't say the same about Jodie, sadly. So far, I really don't have a feel for what kind of character trait she has, and no, being quirky is not a trait. I can't think of a single moment where Jodie does something I can't imagine another Doctor doing. A lot of the time, she just feels like David Tennant's lighter side, but without the depth that came with. She doesn't have a trait that really defines her Doctor. Further, her Doctor really has yet to come across something challenging, something to really shape how we see her as a Doctor. The only Doctor I felt who didn't have this, at least in their first series, was Sylvester McCoy, but Season 24 was much more of a disaster than Series 11 anyway. There's nothing wrong with Doctor Who being a light-hearted adventure around the universe and nothing more. Some of my favourite runs of Doctor Who have been like that. But there is always danger there. Something the Doctor really has to confront, and we just haven't had that with Jodie yet. And this makes her already liked character seem even more limp. What would resolve this, I feel, is one or two stories in Series 12 where she really has to face something that feels dangerous. Maybe people get killed because of her, and through this she develops and we get to see more of what makes her Doctor distinct. It'd certainly make for more captivating television. I dearly hope they improve her Doctor for Series 12. Another issue I feel needs addressing is the really weird morality of the Doctor in Series 11. New Who has always had this weird thing about guns. Classic Doctors didn't like guns, yes, but they would use them if they had to and understood why others had to use them. Series 11 took this to a whole new level, I feel. Quite often Jodie reminds us of how the Doctor doesn't tolerate guns, and in Arachnids of the UK she chastises the weird Trump but not Trump allegory for shooting a giant spider. I'm sorry, but this isn't an intelligent creature that can be reasoned with. This is a giant bloody spider that's already killed lots of people. I think it's perfectly acceptable to shoot it, as it is the very definition of self-defence. Furthermore, the TARDIS crew's plan to resolve the spider crisis is to entice them into a cramped room and lock them in there until they starve to death. I'm sorry, but what the fuck? Shooting a giant spider that is in pain and will probably kill you is a bad thing, but locking spiders in a small room to slowly starve to death is the height of morality? It's just ridiculous! Another example of this dodgy morality is Kablam. The entire situation that happens in Kablam is the fault of the corporations for low-paid workers, letting robots do most of the work and leaving a population in unemployment and poverty, despite the fact they clearly have the technology to completely automate production, hence they are merely hoarding wealth. Yet Jodie Whittaker praises the works for thinking nice things while slaving away to the corporations, ignoring the problems the corporation has and what it continues to cause. In any other Doctor Who story, this corporation would be the villain. They clearly mistreat their workers, hoard wealth, and are irresponsible with the power they wield. Yet, such a rosy view is taken of what is clearly meant to be an allegory for Amazon, or at least the future of Amazon, despite all the horrible things they do both in real life and in the story. I have no problem with politically and morally charged Doctor Who stories. It's been done since 1963. But if you're going to do it, at least have some moral consistency, as a lot of the political elements, particularly in Kablam and Arachnids, are woefully mishandled. For Series 12, far better villains are needed. This feeds back into my earlier point about the Doctor really needing to face some danger, as with the exception of the New Year Dalek, none of the villains are particularly threatening or memorable. Even the New Year Dalek was pretty easily defeated once they'd finished with the Ryan's dad side plot. Most of Series 11 either had villains with no personality, villains that weren't really villains, or none at all. Some may argue that Tim Shaw was a threatening villain, but I couldn't really take him seriously after the rooftop scene, and he grossly outstayed his welcome. Not every Doctor Who story needs a villain, and villains are definitely allowed to be sympathetic, but we really need in Series 12 something a bit more memorable, something that actually gets a bit of time to properly develop, and something that really challenges Jodie's Doctor. Series 11 felt a little too easy. There wasn't really much that the Doctor and co couldn't surmount fairly easily, and something that really felt imposing was missing. As such, the stakes of the drama felt really low, hence making the whole experience of Series 11 a dull one for me. Please be a bit more creative and focused on this front, as the best Doctor Who stories for the most part are ones that have memorable villains who are well developed. Doctor Who needs to take more risks. It's a show which is meant to be all about experimentation and trying new things. Even when they don't work or I personally don't like it, I always appreciate when some inventiveness is tried. This is a show where you can go anywhere and do anything, yet much of this series felt like it was just going through the motions. The only risk they seemed willing to take was making a female Doctor for Series 11. Most of the stories and characters are very run-of-the-mill, lacking in depth, and without trying anything that's really new or different. Most of the scripts feel very workmanlike, and they're reasonably competent, sure, but there really isn't any flair or experimentation to them. It's part of what makes Series 11 very uninteresting to me, and a lot of people. I doubt this is something that will change though, as Chris Chibnall is a very workmanlike screenwriter, but he could prove us wrong, we'll have to see. Finally, we're going to round this off with a far more personal gripe, and that is dialogue. I think this might just be as a result of my premature transformation into a grumpy old man, but I can't stand a lot of the jokes and witty dialogue in Series 11. A lot of it seems extremely forced, in particular the Wi-Fi joke in Resolution, which completely rubbed me the wrong way, and, in my opinion, is by far the worst joke ever done in Doctor Who. Much of what passes for humour in Series 11 is Jodie's Doctor just saying a funny word, like calling the TARDIS crew "fam." It's something which I strongly dislike. However, it's probably unfair to just pick on Series 11, for much of prior New Who was just as bad on this front, so I'll leave it at that. So those are the main points I can think of about how it improves Series 11 for Series 12. I've probably missed a bunch of important stuff out, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. So far, I'm fairly unexcited for Series 12, but as usual, I'll definitely give it a fair shake. At least we're actually going to get a two-part of this series after all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time in another video.